Well, hey there, night owls. I'm Nova, and welcome back to Night Shift Stories, where the scrubs are clean, but the stories, not so much. Tonight, we're peeling back the curtain on the kind of secrets hospitals don't put in their brochures. Some of these tales are ripped from real charts, others are fiction, but all of them will make you think twice about who's holding the scalpel. Viewer discretion is advised. This shift gets dark. So grab your snacks, silence your pager, and settle in. The night shift is officially in session. The courtroom was oppressively silent, minus the shuffle of papers and the occasional cough from the gallery. Rachelle stood tall at the defense table. Her composure defied the weight of the charges against her, which had captured national headlines. How do you plead? The judge demanded, cutting through the tension like a scalpel through skin. With a brief pause before responding, she replied, Not guilty. Gasps rippled through the room as journalists and spectators exchanged glances and jaws dropped with shock. Her defense attorney placed a steadying hand on her arm, but Rachelle did not flinch. Her face revealed nothing, though her mind filled with memories that had brought her to this moment. As the judge explained the proceedings would resume, the nurse's stoic expression filled the television screens, and the scene dissolved into the past, a past that had once painted her as a hero. The flicker of fluorescent lights and the steady rhythm of soft soled shoes on polished floors composed the symphony of the surgical ward. Rachelle walked through the hospital corridors with a presence that commanded respect and admiration. Nurses and doctors nodded their hellos. Patients waiting for surgery seemed to relax as soon as she entered the room. There's nothing to worry about, Mr. Parker, she said warmly to an elderly man waiting for a hip replacement. She crouched to his eye level, resting a reassuring hand on his. I'll be with you every step of the way. I'll even make sure your favorite music is playing during surgery. The man chuckled weakly, nodding in gratitude. Her compassion was palpable, a lifeline to patients terrified of what lay ahead. She was more than just a skilled surgical nurse. She was a beacon of light in a world often reduced to sterile procedures and clinical detachment. Her colleagues spoke of her achievements with awe: multiple Daisy Awards, commendations from top surgeons, and countless glowing testimonials from grateful patients. Her empathy extended beyond her duties. She was known to sit with families long after shifts ended, explaining complicated procedures or simply offering comfort. Yet, beneath this surface of competence and care, a quiet storm brewed. As she passed the nurse's station, she caught a glimpse of a hospital bill someone had left behind. Her jaw tightened. The numbers were staggering: tens of thousands of dollars for a surgery that was, for this patient, the difference between life and death. Quickly composing herself, she continued walking towards the operating room. But the thought remained, souring what pride she had left in her work. Scrubbing for surgery, her mind wandered. The OR was her sanctuary, a place of refuge and teamwork, where every movement contributed to saving lives. But she hated the system she worked within, a system that reduced health to a commodity and placed profits above people. Too many patients arrived with hollow eyes and trembling hands, knowing that even if the surgery succeeded, they'd be crushed under insurmountable debt. It haunted her to watch people sign forms that might as well have been contracts toward their financial ruin. She'd always thought of herself as a healer, someone who did everything in her power to help those in need. But over the years, she had begun to see the cracks in that identity. Am I truly helping? She thought. Or am I complicit in a system that thrives on suffering? She pulled on her gloves, staring at the surgical instruments arranged before her. If the system won't protect them, I have to. In the moments before the surgeon entered, an air of defiance fell upon her. Glancing at the monitors, the sterile blue drapes, and the prepped patients lying on the table, she was the one who had the power to make a difference, however small, however twisted. The door opened. The surgeon's voice broke the silence. Ready to begin? Yes, she said as her mask was secured into place. Not just the physical one, but the mask of compassion that hid a darker determination. The first sign of trouble came during what should have been a routine gallbladder removal. Rachelle, ever meticulous in her duties, deliberately forgot to account for a surgical sponge during the procedure. Her intention was simple: to create a minor issue that will force the hospital to absorb the cost of the surgery. To her, this was a calculated rebellion against the system. Yet, the outcome was far from what she anticipated. Days later, the patient returned with a severe infection. His recovery required multiple additional surgeries and a prolonged hospital stay, leaving him in worse condition than he was when he first arrived. Rachelle was shaken. She visited the patient's room under the guise of offering comfort, but as she sat by his bedside, the gravity of her actions weighed heavily on her. It's for the greater good, she told herself in the quiet of her mind. The hospital will foot the bill for the complications, sparing the patient the crushing financial burden. Yet as she watched him struggle to speak, tubes snaking out of his body, doubt began to creep in. Is this truly the justice I want? Or have I crossed a line that could never be undone? Justice. Definitely justice. Her internal turmoil didn't go unnoticed. Among her colleagues, she was known for her unflinching composure and compassion. But now, a younger nurse, fresh out of school and still full of idealism, started noticing patterns. This junior nurse, assigned to assist during the complicated recovery cases, began connecting dots she wasn't even sure were meant to be connected. Why do these complications always happen in her cases? She wondered. There were subtle discrepancies, surgical counts that didn't add up, and unusual spikes in post operative issues. At first, these suspicions were dismissed as paranoia. After all, this was the nurse everyone admired, the recipient of multiple Daisy Awards and a role model for staff and students alike. But unsettling doubt urged her to watch Rochelle more closely. Meanwhile, outside the operating room, Rochelle crossed paths with a family that would push her deeper. In the waiting room, she overheard a conversation that caught her attention. A mother explained to the receptionist that her son needed immediate surgery but had no insurance. The receptionist's response was firm yet apologetic. Without payment or proof of coverage, the surgery couldn't be scheduled. Rochelle approached the family, drawn by the desperation in the mother's voice and the fear drawn across her face. How can I help? She asked gently, her presence promising hope. The mother broke down, detailing their troubles. Her son had been diagnosed with a rare condition that required urgent intervention, but they had exhausted all financial resources. The boy, no older than 6, clung to his mother's side, his frail body a testament to the weight of his illness. His eyes, wide and trusting, locked onto hers, igniting something deep within her. Kneeling down to his level, brushing a hand over his shoulder. Don't worry, she whispered. I'll figure this out. Later, she sat alone in the break room, wrestling with her thoughts. The boy's innocent face haunted her, stark reminder of why she had started this crusade in the first place. She couldn't ignore the pull to act. The system had failed this family, as it had failed so many others. To deliberately cause a complication in surgery, even for a noble cause, felt like walking a tightrope over a deep abyss. But this was why she had chosen to become a nurse, not to perpetuate the injustices of the system, but to challenge them. And if that meant bending the rules, so be it. As she prepared for the upcoming surgery, the junior nurse watched her closely, sensing something was brewing. But this time, Rochelle was more cautious, aware that she was being observed, yet already formulated a plan to help the boy. Her first complication had left scars, not only on the patient, but on her conscience. It also solidified her determination. This wasn't just a rebellion anymore, it was a mission she couldn't turn away from, no matter the cost. Her crusade pushed her deeper into dangerous territory. Mistakes evolved from minor disruptions to catastrophic errors, carefully orchestrated to exploit the vulnerabilities of the hospital's processes. Like when she swapped medication labels, knowing the patient would have a severe allergic reaction. As the patient's body seized, Rochelle heroically administered the antidote, earning praise for her quick thinking while silently reveling in the fact that the hospital would now have to cover the additional treatment costs. In another case, she deliberately altered a surgical chart, resulting in the wrong leg being amputated. The stunned surgeon questioned the mistake, but Rochelle's composed facade deflected suspicion. As the complications in her cases pile up, murmurs begin to spread among her colleagues. The frequency and severity of these incidents were too unusual to ignore. The investigations were subtle at first, questions about her documentation and requests for clarification on her role in cases. Then a patient filed a formal complaint describing their dreadful experience during what should have been a straightforward procedure. The complaint made its way to hospital administration, sparking an internal review. The tension within the hospital rose as Rochelle's once close relationships with colleagues began to fracture. Nurses who admired her now approached her with caution. Surgeons who once sought her assistance in the operating room were uneasy when she stepped in. Despite the whispers, she remained steadfast in her belief that her actions were justified. Each error is another strike against a system that she deemed broken, a system that left her own family drowning in debt after her father's failed surgery. Flashbacks haunted her. A young girl clutching hospital bills her family couldn't afford, her father's shame as creditors called relentlessly, and the hopelessness that settled within her knowing she was a child who couldn't help. These vivid and painful memories drove her to press on, convinced she was sparing her patients from the same financial ruin. To her, the collateral damage was a small price to pay for justice. Late one night, as she sat in the break room staring at a dim reflection of herself in the coffee machine, she questioned, "Have I gone too far?" She shook her head, bracing herself against the doubt. "This mission, my mission, is righteous, and I shall not fault. This system is the villain, not me." Her latest patient was different. A man in his mid 30s undergoing a routine bowel resection, with his young daughter nervously clutching a stuffed animal in the waiting room. As Rachelle reviewed the case, she couldn't help but notice the uncanny resemblance between the little girl and her younger self. It wasn't just the uncertain eyes or the way she clung to her father, it was the palpable fear of losing him, a fear she had known all too well during her own father's lengthy battle with illness. This time, her crusade felt hollow. Could she risk sabotaging this surgery, knowing it might leave this little girl in a worse position than she had been? As she scrubbed in, Rachelle felt off balance. The patient's condition was straightforward, the kind of case she'd seen dozens of times. Yet as the surgeon prepped the incision site and called for the scalpel, Rachelle hesitated. Her plan had been to manipulate the sutures used to secure the bowel, knowing a rupture would lead to complications requiring additional surgery. But her hands trembled as she held the tray. This man had trusted her, and his little girl's face loomed in her thoughts. "Rachelle, are you with us?" the surgeon asked sharply. She nodded. As the surgery progressed, she tried to focus, but her hesitation created a lapse in communication. A clamp meant to control blood flow was placed improperly, causing sudden hemorrhaging. The room erupted into a frenzy as the surgeon barked orders to stabilize the patient. Her heart pounded as she worked to assist, but her delayed actions had already set the stage for disaster. The patient survived the operation, but just barely. He was left with severe complications, internal bleeding, an infection brewing in his abdominal cavity, and the likelihood of something even more severe, death. Rachelle felt immense guilt as she stood in the ICU hallway, watching the man's daughter peek through the glass. The little girl's tears mirrored Rochelle's memories of visiting her father. She had once vowed to spare others the pain she'd known, but now she questioned if she was merely passing it on in another form. In the hours that followed, Rochelle's emotions spiraled. She replayed the surgery in her mind, torn between her intent to help and the undeniable harm she caused. Her justification? Sabotaging the system was the only way to expose its flaws. She thought of the girl's future. Would she grow up with the same bitterness and resentment she had carried all these years? She recalled her father's words during his last days, urging her to channel her anger into something constructive. But Rachelle had taken a different path. Meanwhile, the hospital swarmed with whispers of the failed surgery. Rachelle could feel the walls closing in as colleagues avoided her in the halls. The surgeon, visibly shaken, requested an immediate review of the case. "Rachelle, I need to see you in my office." Susan, the nurse manager, met her in the locker room before her shift. Rachelle entered, her palms sweating despite her calm demeanor. Seated across from her were Dr. Lawson, a respected surgeon who had begun to grow wary of her actions, and Mrs. Thompson, the hospital's administrator, quietly investigating the increasing malpractice reports. She had to play this right. Mrs. Thompson leaned forward, sharp and scrutinizing. We've received reports about several unexplained complications and surgeries you've assisted with, Rachelle. In light of the ongoing investigations, we carefully reviewed your role and were forced to place you on an indefinite unpaid leave. Rachelle maintained her composure. She had anticipated this moment, yet somehow it was still worse than she imagined. I don't understand, she began. I follow protocols. I help patients in any way I can. What's been happening in those surgeries, those were mistakes. I would never. Don't play innocent, Mrs. Thompson interjected. These aren't simple errors. It's not just one or two cases. It's been at least 15 since we've discovered a pattern. She wanted to scream. The wrong leg was amputated, Rachelle, Dr. Lawson continued, his voice tight with frustration. You could have stopped it. You should have stopped it. You didn't. And the rest? The mistakes in every surgery you've been in? It's hard to believe they were just accidents, especially after all the heroic saves you made. You've been hiding behind your righteous actions, but we're not blind. The wrong leg, the injections, the tampered sutures, they were all laid out before her now, too clear to deny. But how could she explain? How could she justify a campaign of sabotage in the name of righteousness, knowing the hospital's greed was destroying lives? We've reviewed the records, Rachelle, and unless you can offer us a satisfactory explanation, one that absolves you of intentional misconduct, your actions will be classified as criminal. Rachelle pushed down the panic rising in her chest. She had told herself that these actions were necessary, even heroic. But now, the mission she had started with noble intentions had spiraled out of control. She glanced down at her hands, still trembling from the weight of the conversation. She could almost hear her father's voice in her head, urging her to do the right thing. But what was the right thing? She pushed back her chair and stood proudly. You think I'm the problem? You think I'm the one who should be scrutinized? The hospital doesn't care about these patients. It's all about the profits, cutting costs, pushing people through the system like they're nothing but numbers. Nurses are burning out, committing suicide, and they barely get a thank you at the end of the day. I am the one trying to make a difference. I'm the one who actually cares about these people, who sees them as more than dollar signs, who is willing to fight for them when no one else will. I'm not the one destroying lives here. I'm trying to protect them in the only way I know how. The office door swung open and Susan was handed a note. There's been a development, Susan declared as she read the note. The bowel resection surgery patient, the father with the little girl, he didn't make it. Rachelle collapsed into her chair, guilt crashing over her as she realized the father she tried to protect was gone, and the little girl now had no one. The courtroom buzzed as Rachelle entered. She wore a simple black suit and a silver chain, catching the courtroom's bright lights. She sat next to her attorney, hands folded neatly in her lap, her eyes fixed forward as the weight of a dozen cameras pressed upon her. Once she had been a girl who believed in saving the world, who whispered promises to her ailing father that she'd protect others from suffering. That girl had grown into a woman who loved fiercely, fought quietly, and defied a system she couldn't abide. Now, sitting in this courtroom, she didn't fear the verdict as much as the legacy it would leave behind. She cared about her patients, but now she cared about something else even more: how the world would remember her. Will they remember her for the lives she had tried to help or for the harm she had caused? The judge sat high above the courtroom and read her charges aloud: reckless endangerment, gross malpractice, second-degree manslaughter. Each word landed like her gavel strike, sharp and final. Rachelle sat frozen, the world fading until only the pounding of her pulse echoed in her head. How do you plead? The judge asked. Rachelle rose as her life's work was reduced to this list of accusations. She questioned whether she would be remembered as a healer or a villain, a savior or a destroyer. With the calm resolve of a woman who had made peace with her choices, she spoke, not guilty. Thanks for tagging along on another dark detour through the halls of medicine. I'm Nova, and if tonight gave you chills, good. The night shift has a way of revealing things daylight likes to hide. Meet me here next time. We've got more stories to unravel. Until then, stay curious and sleep with one eye open.